Aha, we are live. Anitha, I'm so sorry. I am not the anti-Alan, and I'm not gonna start 2 minutes early. But surprise, everyone! Jordan's here. Yay! So I don't have to talk to myself and look at myself. Well, only myself, I should say. While talking about this book. But yeah, welcome, Jordan. Hi, hello. Y'all
Oh,
know who Jordan is, but just in case people don't know who you are, Jordan, would you like to introduce yourself?
hi guys. I'm Jordan, Sir Jordan Drew. I started doing videos on BookTube like a year and a half ago, consistently. I guess I uploaded my first video in 2020, but never really started doing it. Um, my day job, I fight for the UFC, so brain and brawn, hopefully.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just like a good book and like talking about them. And me and Evie read a very interesting one. I have mixed feelings. I'm still deciding how I feel.
Yeah, not gonna lie, you're probably gonna have to remind me of things that happened in Slow Gods, which, by the way, in case people in chat didn't realize, this is a chat about Slow Gods by Claire North. Not gonna lie, I wanted to DNF it. But solely because you were like, hey, I started. I was like, oh shit. Now I gotta read it. So I gotta actually finish this bad boy. Spoiler alert, Anitha. So Anitha's asking why this is the best book of the year for you. Spoiler alert, for me, it's not. So, hi, Mark. Hi, Simon. It's called Slow Gods, not On Time Gods.
Ooh.
It's true. Hi, Matt. And everyone else here. Yeah, so I guess, was this your first Claire North book? Have you read anything else?
Yes, this was my first Claire North book, and I
Will it
saw
be
I
your
saw
last?
you read. Oh no. So I really liked the vibe. It's funny that you mentioned that because I watched a video like last week. It was like from Lee Childs, and he was like, "Is plot overrated?" And I was listening to it. I'm like, you know what? Vibes, character work, ideas is more important. And then I finished Slow Gods, and I'm like, no, plot's very important to me. I think I've decided that plot is important. Like when I messaged you, I was like, this is a very interesting nothing of a story because you wait for things to happen, and it's just mostly in this character's head. And it was interesting. I like the insight into culture, and I read the first few chapters, and I just remember I just kept thinking to myself, this author writes a autistic coded character so well. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is really well done. And then I Googled the author and she just got diagnosed a few years ago. Made perfect sense.
Yeah.
And we're just in this character's head as they deal with social anxiety, feeling like an outsider. And I loved all those. If it was just a literary fiction book that took place in our world, would have been stellar. But the fact that it was science fiction with very little science, very little adventure, very little plot happening, it was hard. But I like the vibes. I like the vibes.
Yeah, so I struggled actually at the start of this book. But once I looked up I was looking for something. I don't know, I can't remember what I was looking for, but I was looking up something about the author and about this book, and she did an interview with someone, and someone asked her about the inspiration and how she came up with Ma as the main character. And she said that, like, literally this character is like a stand-in for her autism diagnosis. And I'm like, oh, okay, that gives me a little bit of context about Ma. Okay, I get it now. And I loved, like you said, I loved the cultural aspects of it, the explorations of like the little interludes of gender and piloting and all this stuff. And I really wish she had explored that more, all those aspects more. But I don't know, I feel like there was a switch right after, I think we're actually right after probably like midway through part 2, that it was just, I don't know, like it was way less that and more just about I guess the space opera hard sci-fi aspect. And I know that we talked about being fans or not fans of hard sci-fi, and I'm like, this isn't what I don't like about hard sci-fi. This is too hard. No pun intended, but
Too much explaining of things, but then also not enough. So at first, I'm reading the book and I'm like, oh, this is just a hard science fiction. She's setting us up. This is all going to be relevant. And then we learned so much about these cultures, never to see them again. We learn about the science, never to explore it.
yeah.
So it's like hard science fiction, it seems, in the beginning. And then, oh, hey, thank you. I'm glad you came to see me. It makes me feel good. And then it just becomes ideas towards the end. It's funny because I didn't think I was going to finish this book on time for this stream. And then I just got it and you messaged me. It's like the 22nd, and you're like, I'm about to DNF. Everyone else is DNF this book. Have you started it yet? And I had just opened it up. And I'm like, yeah. Then I'm glad there was that pressure because I'm not sure I would have pushed through.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I feel bad about it yet, but it was definitely intriguing.
So Matt still recommends First 15 Lives of Harry August. So technically, as a writer, she's a great writer. It's not bad writing at all. I guess we might as well just hop into spoilers. Who cares about non-spoiler stuff? So if you don't want to hear spoilers about this book, too late. So sad. But 84K? Apparently this person has written a lot more books than I thought.
She also has several pen names.
I thought she just had one. She has multiple? I did not know that.
Yeah, I think she has two, but this book did turn my brain to mush.
Jordan did take one for the team. So we all appreciate Jordan. So. Anita thinks that it's too late for her. She already knows everything. Claire South. Mad. But yeah, no, so like technically I think she's a great writer. And aspects of it really worked, but it just I mentioned this to you in our chat, but the climax and the culmination of this book was so unsatisfying. I think if she had ended it a different way, it would have made the overall experience better. But this whole idea of this all being set up and the whole timey-wiminess of the slow gods being to destroy, I guess justifiably destroy the, oh my god, what are they called? The Shine.
The Shine, the Executorium.
I mean, objectively, I don't disagree because the Shine suck, but I don't know, it just felt very anticlimactic, like you said.
No, it was very anticlimactic, but also throughout the book, there's like these themes about, do small evils make greater goods down the line? Because like this apocalyptic event is coming, and people are knowing that there's going to be sacrificing billions to save the lives of more people. So then we finally meet the slow god, and that scene was pretty cool.
That was.
And then he's like, well, sometimes the greater good, you're going to have to basically, you're going to have to break a few eggs and make an omelet, that type of mentality.
Yeah. And
then everything happens off screen. I didn't get that catharsis. It was like there was no climax. So this book was basically, it felt like the middle book in a trilogy, and the ending was all falling action with no climax. So I feel like if this was the middle book in a series, would have been perfect. Would have set things up for the next part. But I feel like we were just meandering and following this plot listily around. And then the payoff at the end where he bumps into the leader of the Shine, and we're discussing like, oh, is this going to be the thing? No, we don't even know what happens. It just skips forward to Ma many years later. Good ideas, but maybe not the best story.
As Simon says, slow god actually just grandpa, wise old people advice. You're not completely off base. Also, Claire North is friends with Adrian Tchaikovsky. Being prolific at writing sci-fi must be contagious. That was the Adrian Tchaikovsky blurb. Not gonna lie, got me intrigued, got me hopeful, and favorite authors can have weird tastes, so it's fine. But yeah, I guess to talk about characters, Ma himself, what was your experience with him and how, I mean, obviously we talked about how he's very autism coded and stand in for the author's autism diagnosis, but him as a character, how did you enjoy his character?
I really liked him. I'm not gonna lie. At first, I thought the twist was gonna be that Ma was like an AI towards the end. Like the way he was describing things and going off on all these tangents. I thought the ending of the book was going to say that Ma was now basically an all-knowing sentient AI. And then just getting to know him as a character, seeing his heartbreak as things happen, seeing him become cynical and just go through the motions. Like we all go through the motions sometimes, very relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And just him wrestling with this idea that like about trying to find meaning in a life with no ending, about whether that's a monstrous thing or a blessing, whether or not it's even worth using your infinite life for good. I really liked how he wrestled with those things. I really like how even towards the end, he still doesn't have all the answers. He's very relatable while also kind of being very much far away out of reach.
Yeah.
She did a very interesting thing with his character. And he's compelling. I really liked him. But I really like a lot of the supporting cast of characters. I feel like we just didn't get to meet any of the or spend any time with any of the supporting cast because Ma just lives for centuries and moves on and meets new people. Yeah, very much a one-man show.
Yeah. I am of I think at the start, even before I realized the autism diagnosis coded stand-in thing, but even more so after, at the beginning, until I got finished with part 1, I was very put off by the fact that no, sorry, maybe it was part 2. But basically the depiction of Ma and everyone who pilots as becoming like violent and just these completely other characters that everyone is terrified of, and seeing that as a stand-in or a analog, whatever you call that, for autism, I'm like, that's not a good message to like portray that, oh, if you're autistic or neurodivergent or whatever, that you're just gonna be violent. Like that doesn't make sense. And I struggled with that. That his when he did feel things, it was just resulted in violence. So I did struggle with that, but as he's connected or introduced to, oh my god, what is the main planet called? It starts with an A. Algebra? No.
Ajimari and Ajimir.
Thank you. I read words. I don't hear them aloud in my head. But that whole aspect, I loved that. And that's what I wanted the focus to be on, is just this planet dying. And that could have taken up the entire book and I would have been happy. And especially his connection with Gebra.
Yeah.
That was fascinating. It kind of reminded me, and I don't know if you've read this or not, but Dying of the Light by George R.R. Martin. Just that aspect of it, where
I haven't read that.
Planet is dying, and Ma goes to the planet, especially at that last time he goes to the planet. It's just dying, and you feel the isolation and that how there's so few people there. It kind of reminded me of that. But yeah. But I did like Ma, even though I was conflicted about him at the start. I would agree, like the supporting cast was more interesting. Gebra, Reneki, the like fox robot.
Yeah, the fox machine. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, but I thought, like you mentioned, how like the contrast between the Shine and Ma's cultural background and Gebri's, and I thought that was going to be like the central conflict about how he comes from this hyper capitalistic, extremely extractive, oppressive like nation where everyone's value is determined by how much they can contribute, how much money they make, and then Gebri's is very much a very communal. Like we exist for each other. We can't exist in a vacuum. And I love seeing him compare the two and him start to realize how much his worldview has been influenced by his upbringing.
Yeah.
And that was super fascinating. Just how she would say something and it would stick with him. And I love how he kept returning to things that she told him throughout the book. Like he'd go through a traumatic thing and then he'd think of this thing that Gebri said, and he would find like peace and strength in that. And I love a story where it's just talk about like, here's one extreme of like the political communal spectrum, and here's the other side of it, and let's compare them and compare how that affects the culture. I was really hoping that the book was just about that, would have been an absolute like home run for me. But then as he starts meeting all these other cultures, and we don't spend nearly as much time diving deep into those. Yeah, this would have been this could have been an interesting series, like a trilogy with all these concepts spread out across several books. I think could have been pretty good.
Or alternatively, just focused on that Shine Al-Jabiri, again, I'm gonna butcher that, dynamic. Like it could have been like an Ursula K. Le Guin-esque, like sci-fi, like classic. But I will say that getting introduced to Ma into the Shine in that world was so depressing to read. And I'm like, all right, this feels hitting a little too close to home in the extremes of that society. And I'm like, oh, this is it took me probably at least 2 weeks to read probably the first 3 chapters. And they're very short chapters because it was just so heavy. And the world of the Shine was just so awful. Yeah, and it's just I don't disagree that with the overall arc of and the intent of what Claire North was going for with the book, but just the execution of it just was off and it didn't work. Didn't land for me. But what was I gonna say? So Ma's character, oh god, I can't remember. My brain went blank. Oh yeah, the world itself, talking about like the capitalist society. Did you? I guess I mean, other than the extremes of it, like, did you dive into it at all? Did you like the exploration of that, or where you feel like something was lacking, or anything like that?
I really like the way we dove into like the philosophy and the politics and just the culture of the Shine, because especially like my background's like political science, like I always was debating people about these things, and it's like the Shine is literally just like a society that's all about the market, all about status, all about prestige. And we've been told, at least my entire life, I've been told those are the things I should be chasing after.
Yeah.
And that lead, like if everyone acts selfishly in that way, the world becomes a better place because market forces are magic. And then I read this story about a society where everyone is following the market forces, just optimizing for that. And I think it just ends up being a horrible place to be around. Like, it sounds like a horrible society where everyone's just existing to pay off debts. Because as soon as you're born in the Shine, like, you have a price tag and you got to pay that off or you're useless. And if you do a crime and get caught,
more and more debt. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just too real. I have a lot of friends who are struggling with like crippling student debt, and that's horrible. If you guys are wondering how the Shine is, if you've read Murderbot Diaries about how hyper capitalistic and oppressive that system is throughout, like most of the systems are in that series, it's like Murderbot and its musings about society without the humor. And I needed some humor. I needed some humor if we're going to talk about something so bleak. Because Gebri is very much, because Ma is very much like, here's how things are. It's kind of weird and quirky that we decided to pick the society, but that is how it is. There's nothing we can do. And he's just so defeatist for a protagonist. He doesn't he doesn't expect to influence any change. And that's just contagious to the reader. I'm like, yeah, that is all pointless. These monsters are too big to slay. It was kind of hard. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Speaking of Ma, Simon says Ma's just boring with everything he is. He should be a fascinating character, but North made him so dull. He has no personality, and honestly, I think it's an awful representation of autism. And Matt says, I just see sci-fi names. I don't actually learn them. Fact, but cross out sci-fi and I just see words / names and I don't actually learn them. Autistic people are not dull, violent, crazy people. That's just not a good representation. Yeah, I agree. And apparently she has multiple books under Kate Griffith and Claire North. Under the first name, she writes fantasy author, and under Claire North, she writes science fiction. And then she also is like, is her real name Catherine Webb or something like that? I feel like that's the name that I've heard. There isn't a clash of cultures, though, because The Shine is a strawman version of dystopian capitalism. It's just obviously bad. Oh, all right, yeah. And to be fair, a lot of people on the spectrum are often accused of dull personalities. Listen, I've been described as very dull, so it's fine. Actually, speaking of comparisons, because you brought up Murderbot Diaries, which, to be fair, I haven't read. As I was reading this, especially the whole piloting and the kind of dark shadows that were constantly alluded to, and I don't think they were ever explained or even explored really, apart from, oh, it's dark shadows and people don't want to experience them or be touched by them. It reminded me of the Final Architecture series.
No, it very much does, and that's what I was expecting to get. I was expecting to get more information about that because I'm reading The Eyes of the Void. I was reading The Eyes of the Void at the same time, which is they're very hard to read at the same time. I'm going to have a very hard time this month, honestly. But like, there's like Claire North is hinting at these cosmic horror elements, and Ma's wondering throughout the entirety of the book, like, what is this darkness? Why does it ignore me? Why does it ignore me? Why am I safe from it? And then I think it's kind of implied that he is the darkness.
Yeah.
You know, that like that's just something in his nature, and that's why it ignores. That's why it's so familiar to him. That's why it leaves it messes with everybody but him. But then also when you pair the whole idea of him having this darkness with him being very clearly an autistic character, I do think the messaging is very mixed about how she's framing who he is as an individual. Yeah. It's really messy, and I'm really sad that we didn't get more information about that, because Ma's basically the god of darkness, you know, to put it in like grandiose terms, but we don't even know what that darkness is. I was hoping we get another interaction with the slow god. There were so many things I thought was going to happen after the climax that just didn't happen. Yeah. It's a very frustrating book.
There was a mention about halfway through the book about some sort of like cube thing that had dark tendrils in it, and maybe I misread it or misinterpreted it, but I felt like that was like an aspect of the slow that was in there for whatever reason, and it was like being like this wise thing that was giving answers. Reminded me of the computer from
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide. I half expected it to be like 42. But yeah, so the dark tendrils there, I'm like, wait, is that part of like the slow? And then if they're dark tendrils, does that mean like the darkness that they see as they're traveling is the slow? But then he actually meets the slow god or whatever at the end, but I never get a resolution of any of that. So I think there were elements there that are just, they were, I don't want to say lazily put together, but they were They were haphazard.
No, I
And they
see
were
what you mean.
left dangling, as it were.
Yeah.
Oh, her real name is Catherine Webb. Okay.
Also the consensus. Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. Matt says he took it as darkness is using him to learn about things, to be curious, like AI Collective is curious and always learning. Okay.
That is interesting. But yeah, like the consensus, that was such a compelling part of the story, and we just leave the consensus. But I like how before Ma comes to the realization that he's kind of like a god, and the slow god kind of explains it to him. And he says that like basically the consensus and the slow god are types of deities, because the consensus is a hive mind of individuals, and in that respect, they're probably going to be eternal, because there's always going to be people that are a part of the consensus, and that the slow god is just never going to disappear. It's all knowing, and it's going to live forever. And then Ma, like they're all different versions of like how people have characterized gods throughout history and throughout different religions. And I found that really interesting, because like in Hinduism and Buddhism, there's like avatars of gods, and that's like the collective, like everyone's attached to the same source that is God, and that's why they're eternal. And then Ma is just like the idea that like God's just like this essence that really there's not really meaning behind. It's only mystery. Then the slow God's just all powerful, all knowing, and omnipresent. It's everywhere, and how they're all different aspects of how people have described deities.
Huh.
But we don't dive into that. We don't dive into that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, and arguably, this is more of a joke. The Shine is a capitalistic god.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad joke. But yeah, I again so conflicted about this book. I mean, I gave it 2.5 stars, and I feel like that was generous, to be fair. But at the same time, there's so much there to think about in individual pieces, but as a whole, it's just, I don't know, it's greater than what's the phrase? Greater than the sum of its parts, or whatever that phrase is. So yeah, I'm conflicted. So Mark says this frustrating book is making me want to read it so I can be frustrated with you with everyone. Listen, Angela from Literature Science Alliance loves this book. She thought that I would love it, and she was very sad that I did not. And that's the thing, like, I trust and I value Angela's opinions, and she has great taste, so I don't know. It's all, reading is subjective. We all know that. But they don't completely dive into how what people think of Ma seems to change him into what they think, beyond just bringing him back from the dead or turning him into the monster. Oh, yeah.
I do love how Ma's always threatening people when they're trying to kill him. He's like, you better hope you never take your eyes off me. You better keep thinking I'm dead, or I'm going to get... Like, those are pretty cool parts. I wish there was more of the action scenes, because whenever Ma was angry, it was pretty cool. Like, those are very compelling scenes, because you actually see him show some personality, show some fire, if you will.
Yeah, that first scene where he just goes, he literally just pulls that heart out of that person's chest. I'm like, yeah. oh, this is gonna be violent. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Simon has a question. What do you think about North's commentary on gender and on how people reacted to the death of their world?
I thought that was wonderful. I think this book had the most casual, seamless use of alternate pronouns and just describing gender. It was very, like, the best way I've ever seen it pulled off from a book I've read. And there were so many pronouns. It also kind of made it easier to keep the character straight, because every character had different pronouns. And we often hear how, like, oh, that's just messy. Pronouns make things complicated, makes language confusing. Maybe for a paragraph. But it was really cool. I'm like, oh, this is a computer person, because they're using like hey, Kim pronouns. and
Yeah.
this is this type of person, and how even Gabri's like, you're going to reduce gender just to genitals, and she just says it just in a very frank, straightforward way. And
Yeah.
Ma's like, yeah, I guess we do. But if you're from the shine and your whole life is just meant to be in service of capital, of the government, of the market, then everything else doesn't matter. It's just your utility. And yeah, it was very well done. And then the way she depicted how people react to their impending doom and how how different cultures would react to it, because Gabri's from a very communal, social, a society with a lot of social ties. It's very similar to kind of how Japan deals with a lot of national tragedies,
Oh,
and then the Shine's very much like how I think someone in the West would deal. Like, we're always
how
getting
can I
ready to like
capitalize
destroy
off
each other
this?
when bad things
It's
happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So Simon and I were actually talking about the gender aspect before he DNF'd it. Um and he made the comparison. Sorry, Simon, to call you out here. Or give you the shout out. There you go. I'm not calling you out. I'm just giving you the shout out. He mentioned The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin, and how Le Guin was exploring gender in that novel, which I can't remember if you've read or not, but
I haven't read it yet, but I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
okay. So but I mentioned to Simon, I'm like, Le Guin, it his comment about it made me really like reflect on that book. Mind you, it's been a few years since I've read it. And it made me realize that Le Guin is looking at gender from in the fluidity of gender from a purely biological perspective. 'Cause I don't think it's much of a spoiler, but like in this the world of winter and the people there, they can literally biologically change genders, and men can become pregnant and women can whatever. It's still a binary, but it's you can truly
You tra- it's yeah, it's
it,
fluid. It changes,
yeah,
interchangeable.
yeah, from a biological perspective. And I think what North is exploring is that fluidity of gender, um with obviously the variety of pronouns and the exploration and depiction of gender in these societies and in this world from a purely sociological perspective, which I thought was great. I loved the interlude on gender. I thought, I I I would read an entire book about that. That would be amazing. Especially the mention about how the Shine are, oh, they look at society and gender as men versus women, and that they don't think, oh, it's just that. They don't understand how other cultures have a fluidity of gender. And the mention that actually when you have the perfect, or what how did she phrase, I can't remember how she phrased it, but like basically that
Like the
like the
perfect
hyper
specimens.
masculine,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. Basically to be like the perfect man, or the most manly man, you are you are acting to a gender role,
Mhm.
and to a gender expectation. But I thought that was fascinating and great. Simon, I wanted more depth on both of those things. We didn't spend enough time in the culture. I would agree. Again, like so many elements of this were fascinating, and we got a glimpse into them, and the focus. I don't know. I feel like, to your point, Jordan, it could have been a series where we were focusing on all these things in more depth and detail. Um, in Left Hand, they're all non-binary except for Kimmer, when they become either men or women. Thank you for that clarification. It's obviously been a while since I read the book, so they can be either. So it doesn't matter. It erases patriarchy. It eliminates any conflict between the sexes because they aren't one or the other. They just are. Fair. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Um, but yeah, the end of this book was, I mean, like we've been saying, it was pretty anticlimactic. Um, but oddly enough, it's something I kind of am still thinking about, Even
Mm-hmm.
even if we weren't having this conversation, I'm the him going closer to the slow god. I don't know if you've seen the movie Arrival, but in my
Yeah.
mind, it's like, Louise going to the aliens at the end. I just have that in my head, and I'm like, "That's interesting." Um, and it's the ideas are fascinating, and the monologues, like the monologue from the slow god and the monologue from the consensus, representative who I am blanking on. Um,
Plots. I know you're talking about her name. It's hard for me to pronounce.
yeah, but, like, normally monologuing would bother me, but I loved it in this particular case. Um,
Gooksel. Gooksel.
there you go, thank you.
Gooksel.
Um, but yeah, I haven't read enough hard sci-fi to like, understand if that's a thing, like, if is hard sci-fi and a sci-fi of ideas, like, at polar opposites with each other, or is a hard sci-fi expected to be, like, a novel of ideas, like, I don't know, classic sci-fi, like, trying to think, Asimov or something. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with too much hard sci-fi.
Okay, y
Yeah, 'cause
we're
I'm
in the same boat
relatively
then.
new to science fiction. But
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Hmm.
what's it called? What's it called? I think seeing the way Claire North was talking about culture, I think if she would have just written a memoir about how she's viewed the world individually and about how she got her autism diagnosis and how it put everything into the right frame and finally made her everything click for her. Like the way she's able to talk about these revelations she's having about society, about culture, about what you're supposed to say about being an other. If she would have just written like a short memoir about just her experience feeling like an other and then finally having like a word, a label to put onto it. The way she writes about this and these ideas would be a wonderful thing to read. It'd be a great like partial memoir for her to discuss. Because I feel and a lot of science fiction just does this where like they want to talk about philosophy or they want to talk about something very specifically and they just use that. They use all the science to like,
It's
cover
a
it.
vehicle into that, yeah.
Yeah, it's a vehicle, but I would love to just listen to her or listen to yeah, she uses her they pronouns. Listen to them talk about just their experience of that because it's just so well thought out and so succinct the way she describes these cultural phenomenon that we just take for granted. Yeah, that was a very beautiful aspect of this book. It was tackled very well.
Yeah, I agree. Simon says he doesn't think that this was all that hard in regards to sci-fi because the science was very fluffy. But he has a question, how did we want the book to end?
I I wanted Ma to a conclusion about whether or not what he does matters, and him just be able to say solidly like it doesn't matter or it does. And I feel like the slow god says like it's up to you to decide, and Ma's still like, well, I'm not quite sure towards the end. So any ending where Ma would have planted his feet firmly somewhere, I would have been comfortable with that because the slow god very much had their opinions. Like, oh no, like this matters. This is important. This is the purpose of life. And Ma's kind of just like, what's next? I'm gonna figure it out. But I guess if you live forever, that's kind of what's expected. You're not gonna. He's still pretty young in his endless life, or even just seeing what he did with the executor, the leader of the Shine. I wish we would have just gotten to see what he decided because he's basically just like, I'm bored of you. You don't matter enough for me to even make the decision now. I'm going to sleep. I like seeing him, the power shift, how Ma used to always talk about how the leader of the Shine was like this larger than life figure, about how he was terrifying, he was all these things. And then the moment Ma's face to face with him and he sees him for what he is, he's like, now you're boring. all your power's gone. Like all your power came from how people perceived you, and I've just decided that doesn't matter anymore. And I wish we could have seen exactly where that was going to go, or at least if it was alluded to. But we didn't get that. We just got Ma looking out into the abyss and being like, "Okay, let's go on another adventure."
Yeah. I think for me, it would have been. I personally am a fan of like cyclical type narratives, things that reference back to a beginning or what's it called, like a hero's journey type situation. And I think it would have been really, really cool to see Ma either back on Ajumiri, like right before it exploded, and was hit by the twin stars, or
Mm-hmm.
on the Shine itself, like the planet where the Shine were. And somehow, like, I don't know, maybe he got a final death from that. That would have it would have been tragic, but it would have been like some sort of poetic, like cyclical thing. I thought would have been, I think that would have made sense, honestly. Sorry. I think that would have made the whole thing a little bit more palatable and I guess literary, since I maybe that's what Claire North was going for, is the more literary aspect with the sci-fi elements. I think having the catharsis of that type of ending might have worked better. Um, sorry, my cat is meowing. But yeah, so I don't know, but I'm not a writer, so it's we get the endings we get, and we get the story we get, and it's all a matter of if it works for us. And I don't know, Jordan, write a story now with that ending and that you want. So
I think as you were explaining that, because Ma's very much he's focused on endings. He's always talking about people he's met who's died. He's talking about things that are like societies that are falling apart, things that are going to be lost. So like I feel like because we're mortal, we have a very finite existence. We're like, okay, like what's the ending mean? But for Ma, there is no ending. So like he's finally at peace with the fact that he's like none of it matters because there is no ending. It's not significant. Like he even says like the mantra he's always saying to himself is like nothing matters more than this. He's like no one's life matters more than another. Like we are everything and we are nothing. He's always doing that mantra.
yeah,
And then at the end, oh okay, I'm actually getting more comfortable with the themes at the end now. It's like I have no ending, so like my narrative's ongoing. So like I think maybe the literariness is just, and because he's an immortal being with no ending, he just goes on, and we're gonna figure out or not figure out. But we can imagine that just ongoing. He just transforms into myth.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
to your point, like the slow god is immortal, never dying, and the consensus lives on as long as there is a member of the consensus that has all the memories of everyone.
Hmm.
But then that makes me think of like, well, if an individual has the ability to be immortal and has no end, that doesn't mean that everybody else has that. So like the Ajamiri, like they have, well, you know what? They have
Like.
their stories that they
Mhm.
were trying, in their songs that they were giving to their kids, and as they were fleeing the planet. And there was talk about how those songs, the meaning of them were shifting and changing with the generations who, as the generations occurred and went on, the context and the meaning of those songs changed because they wouldn't have seen the planet that these things stemmed from. Um,
Mhm.
so I think I just talked myself out of that. So but no, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Dang it! Did I like this book more than I
Yeah,
thought?
like now that we're talking about it, like, and because and Miles always talk about how he's never changing. Every time he comes back, he's exactly the same, and how it frustrates him because something's wrong with him from his point of view, but he can never change. And he's watching these cultures that should be dead, but they're not really dead because the people keep going on. The songs keep getting sung, even if the meaning is different. And then he's talking to that Ajamiri girl who lives on the spindle. And like
Yeah.
he like blurts out, like, did you walk through the pathway and say your own name, say your pronouns? And she's like, no. But then later she talks about how she's going to do that soon. And he talks about like that dead language he's learning from Ajamir. And that he's like, this is important, even though no one's gonna speak it but me, it's still important that it goes on. Because he's unchanging and immortal. It is different from the slow god who still changes. The slow god decides he's gonna change, but Ma does not change. Because he's never been able to change. Which makes sense why he doesn't change towards the end. I don't know. I might talk myself into liking to being positive. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm glad I gave it 2.5 stars. That is middling, you know? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, those are the books that I feel like are the most interesting to discuss. Things that are you didn't absolutely hate, but you didn't absolutely love, because there is, I don't know. Regardless, I feel like after discussion, I like a book more because I've discussed it
Mhm.
in more detail with people. Um, the ideas were good. The reading of the book sucked, though.
The
Simon, to
the
be fair, you
audiobook.
DNF the book, so
Yeah. That's why no one will remember your name. But uh, that is like the audiobook came in clutch. The
yes,
narrator was amazing. Like
yeah,
I commute an hour to town to work every day. And I'm like, I'd be reading it at home and be like, I'm just gonna listen to this tomorrow because I had such a hard time reading through it. But the narrator was really good, and it made it much easier to understand how to pronounce all the pronouns and the different cultures. Like I couldn't pronounce Ajamir. I had to hear him say that.
yeah.
And
And
then
the
at first I
accents
thought,
that he gave the various characters, like, I thought that was really, really good, so
yeah. And the way for the shy, it's like the super masculine and the super feminine. It's like he and hey. I
yeah.
thought the narrator just had an accent. I was like, why do you say it weird that time? And then I read it in person, like, oh, it's because it has a little dash sign above the E. It was cool. It was interesting. The narration definitely made it a lot easier, though.
Oh, yeah. It helped with the momentum, because when I was reading physically, like I said, it took me, like, 2 weeks to read the first 3 very short chapters, but I was like, "Ah, screw it. I gotta get the audiobook. I gotta get momentum. It's gonna take me 6 months to read this book if I don't have it." Um, and helped with momentum, and, it I think it's partially because the not because the ideas were well, partially the ideas were pretty heavy, but again, like, the Shine world was very, like, very depressing, and I'm like, "Listen, I'm already a depressed person. Do I wanna read about a depressing world? Like, come on." But all joking aside, I the narration an audiobook narrator can make or break a book, and the fact that this narrator elevated the book so much, was very, I was very thankful for that, but also I'm interested to see what else that narrator has done
Had
for
done. Yeah.
so but yeah.
Yeah. I think it's in way you're talking about the ideas and like the character point of view. I think you might like Murderbot. It's not. I don't think it's as good as everyone says it is. My wife loves it. I've read all the installments, but Murderbots, he's a very autism coded character, which is a lot of social anxiety, who doesn't quite understand like interactions, and he's always referencing shows he's watching, and that's how he puts things into context. So in
So
that
he's
way,
basically Space Abed from Community, if you've seen Community.
yeah, exactly. He's space Ovid with cannons in his hands, and like I was telling my wife, I'm like, if this book wasn't so so exhausting to read. I'm like, I think you love the main character. He's just very interesting. Just not too much personality, but Murderbot's like Ma with some charisma and some humor and cannons in his hands, as opposed to just being able to reach through the ether and do weird stuff.
Interesting. Have you seen the Murderbot show?
Yeah, I really liked it.
Okay.
Yeah, it elevated. I think it kind of took aspects that are just referenced in the books. And I think the show, the first might be controversial. I think the show is kind of better than the book, actually.
I
The
mean,
show is tugging on your heartstrings.
it's Alexander Skarsgård. You can't go wrong with that guy. So, Simon says, I do agree Murderbot is a better representation of autism than Slow Gods. Okay. I mean, again,
and especially
Abed. He's like the best autism depiction on popular media, in my opinion. And if it's Space Abed, win-win. So
yeah. Especially because both Murderbot and Ma have their hyperfixations that they just keep focusing on. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I might be picking up Murderbot pretty soon then. Yeah. Anyways, I feel like we've talked this book to death.
Yeah.
And we've convinced ourselves, maybe gaslit ourselves into liking it a little bit more. So that's a win. So
Yeah, sunk cost fallacy. We've already spent so much time and effort going through it. May as well like it.
exactly. But thank you. For context, everyone, I very last minute I asked Jordan to join. So thank you, Jordan, for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And then so this month we're reading the Forgotten. I almost had the names out of order. Words out of order. The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia McKillop. And I think we're still trying to decide on what we're gonna read for June, but I should hopefully have that up fairly soon.
So, is there a poll in the Discord?
There is.
Okay.
I'll just add you to the Discord.
Okay, I was like, I'm about to jump into.
Cool. All right,
So I
sweet.
want to be able to vote a bit.
Yeah. Currently, well, I'm not gonna spoil it for anyone that's just watching this after the fact. Don't want to influence the vote, as it were. But yeah, anyways, thank you again, Jordan, for joining. I really appreciated the company, the conversation, us convincing each other to like this book more. Because I mean, it's great talking about books. So thank you. And thank you everyone. Thank you everyone in chat for joining. Yeah, Matt, Simon, Anitha, even though he probably dropped off, Mark, who else am I forgetting? I feel like I'm forgetting somebody else, but thank you everyone in chat that joined.
Oh.
Sorry, my computer died. It's okay. We're back. We're good. It glitched. But yeah, thank you again. Sorry about that. Go ahead and end the stream now because I don't know how to turn off on these things. So, guys.
See you guys. Thanks for having me.